Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today's episode is all about a concept that I've been thinking about lately, and that is hindsight. Hindsight being a great thing. We all look back on decisions we've made and actions that we've taken in the past. And for a lot of them, we can think, you know what, if I was to do that again, I would do it differently because we have hindsight. And I think that, things make so much more sense when we look back on them. And I think reflecting on things that happened in the past, everything becomes much more obvious. Things like what we should have prioritized maybe a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The stress maybe that we shouldn't have carried for all of that time, stress that maybe was never ours to carry. The people that we should have appreciated more, the moments that we should have appreciated more, and maybe the people that we should have appreciated less and given less time and energy to. Maybe the ways in which we have neglected ourselves over the years and convinced ourselves that we would sort it out later. And we keep pushing things down the road. We keep kicking the can down the road and saying that we'll sort it later. And hopefully you're starting to realize that I'm talking about health here. We all think there's more important things going on at the moment. And when the time is right, when conditions are perfect, I'll then start and focus on my health and fitness. But to be honest with you, I've said it on the podcast multiple times at this stage that for me, I believe that health is the table that everything else in my life sits on. And I think it's true for everyone, when your health is gone, nothing else matters. The job doesn't matter, the relationships don't matter if they're no longer going to be there as a result of your poor health. And I think if we had the ability to fast forward to the end of our lives, or if we were told that we had an finite amount of time to live, I think everything, health and everything that's important would become so clear. The importance of, as I said, health, our energy, our peace, our connections, the people we surround ourselves with, our time. Like time is a finite resource, and maybe for a lot of us, we aren't spending that in a way that if we had the ability to go to the end of our life and look back, that we would probably choose to. The way we're looking after our body, rest, and what was enough. Like a lot of us hold such high expectations of ourselves. Expectations, I actually had this conversation with a client yesterday, expectations that we wouldn't ask of anybody else. So I know that's the expectations that I have of myself. I'd never expect a loved one to hold themselves to such high standards. So what I'm trying to get around to is, I think if we realized how we treated ourselves throughout our lifetime mattered a lot more than we give it credit for in the moment, I think it would change the way that we live our lives. And one of the biggest things that separates humans from most other species on planet Earth is that we have the ability of foresight, right? So we get to imagine the future. We get to essentially time travel in our minds, We can picture consequences before they happen. We can, say to ourselves, if I keep doing this, then I'm probably going to get this outcome. We can essentially plan for the future. We can look into the future and say, okay, I think this is going to happen if I continue to live this way. And most other animals don't have that ability. They live, and I'm laughing now because wouldn't it be a luxury just living in the day to day, not having the worries about the future? But that's something that I want to chat about in a minute. But for most animals, they largely live in the present, right? So they're day to day is driven by instinct. It's driven by survival. It's driven by their immediate needs in the day. So things like food, safety, reproduction, threat from other animals. And we used to live this way when we weren't apex predators, but we no longer live in this survival mode. We have that luxury, I suppose, not to have to think on a daily basis, where am I going to get food? Or who's going to come behind me and kill me? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Okay. So animals are so focused on the day today, and they don't have this ability of foresight. You won't watch a David Attenborough documentary and see a poor little gazelle and think, I wonder if they're wondering what their life is going to look like in 5 years' time, or what they're going to have for breakfast. They're very living in the moment, whereas we're the opposite. We can, pause, we can think, we can reflect, we can imagine, we can plan for the future. Now, obviously, things don't always go to plan and life happens and priorities shift. I get that. But for the most part, the actions that we take on a daily basis determine where we will be in a year's time. We also get to prioritize what is most important to us in our lives. And we get to delay gratification if we choose to do so. So we get to say no now for better things to come. And I think this is what catches so many people out in today, and the age that we live in that, everything is just now. This instant gratification, anything that you want, pretty much you can get at your fingertips within, if not in the day, within a couple of days. And it's so hard to get away from that. It's so hard to say, no, do you know what? I'm not going to have the takeaway now, even though it's easier. I'm going to stick to what I had planned to eat because I know this time next year it will benefit me. We don't look at things like that, but that's what happens. Your future self is dependent on the actions that you're taking today. And I think this ability to see into the future or predict the future, this foresight that we get as human beings, I think it's one of our greatest gifts. But I also think it's one of the most underused gifts that we have as human beings, because most people use this, and I mentioned it literally a couple of minutes ago, to imagine what could go wrong, to worry, to wonder about the worst case scenario, to think about or to ruminate on failure, on rejection. If I try and do this thing that I've always wanted to do, what happens if I fail? What happens, if people laugh at me? I wonder what other people will think. We use this ability of foresight to focus on the negative, focus on what could go wrong. But instead of using, this ability that we get that most other animals don't get, to look at the negative all the time, maybe we should look at, it as a gift of looking into the future and realizing the importance of caring for ourselves now, prioritizing what really matters now. Because as I just said, the actions that you take today, the decisions that you make today determines where you will be in a year's time. But people disconnect from that because the consequences of not doing and giving into that instant gratification, the consequences aren't immediate. Like, you don't skip the gym today and, something really bad happens to you tomorrow. You don't, get the takeaway today and the next day and the next day and the next day, and then your health is gone a week later. It's not this instant thing. But there is a price to be paid for neglecting your health. In the long term, it happens slowly, it happens quietly. It is basically compounding over time until, for a lot of people, it's too late. I get so many people coming to me who, have either got a diagnosis or maybe are pre-diabetic or maybe diabetic, and they're looking to reverse that. Now, obviously, if it's pre-diabetic, I've worked with a lot of people and we've actually reversed that diagnosis and they're absolutely clear now. But you can get health complications that can't be reversed, So my whole thing today is about using this ability of foresight that we get to look into the future and say to yourself, do you know what, if I keep acting the way I act today, if I keep taking the piss out of myself, if I keep delaying, or if I keep giving in to instant gratification, I'm going to end up paying for that at some point down the line. And for the rest of this podcast, I want to do this kind of activity with you. I have done it with my clients and I think it's so, so useful, right? I want you to imagine and take this seriously, right? But imagine on the day that you were born, you were given a set of car keys and you were told that this is the car that you will get, and it is the only car that you will get to bring you through your whole lifetime. So basically, this is it. There's no replacement. There's no upgrade. There's no newer model you get, or there's no trading it in when bits start to break or things start to go wrong. Just imagine that in your mind, right? Imagine this is the car that carries you through your entire existence. And think about this for real. How would you treat that car if it was the only one you ever got? You'd probably treat it and protect it like your life depended on it. And here's the funny thing. Your life does depend on it, because your body, I'm not talking about a car here if you've not realized, your body is the only body that you will ever get for the rest of your life. And when I was thinking about this podcast, I actually was thinking about the number of people who look after their actual cars so well. They're pristine. They clean them all the time. They lock them in the garage to protect them from weathering. They service them regularly. They wouldn't let anyone in with mucky boots and all of these different things. They look after their car so well. This object that can be replaced. Yes, they take their body for granted, which is an object that can't be replaced. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the podcast is I'm going to talk about specific things that you would probably focus on if you are given this one car for the rest of your life. And I'm going to relate them to what you should probably focus on when looking after your health. Because if you just quickly think about this car, like you'd make sure you'd fuel it properly, right? Obviously food for us. You would make sure that you drive it regularly so the engine didn't seize. Same with us, moving our body regularly. As I said, you'd service it often. You'd look after it. You would pay attention to it. You would give it what it needs so that it would run smoothly for as long as possible. And that's what I'm going to chat about in this podcast and reference it back to the car analogy, because I think, right, when we take ourselves out of the equation, I was only having this conversation recently, right? When we take ourselves out of the equation, we know the advice we would give to other people, to our loved ones, to our friends on how, they should treat themselves, how they shouldn't let others take advantage of them, how they should pack in the job because it's causing them so much stress and your life isn't worth it. Yet we can't take that advice for ourselves. So using this car analogy, it takes you out of the equation and it allows you to see things so much clearer. Like one example is, and I think this is pretty obvious, for the car, you wouldn't put cheap diesel in it every single day and then be shocked when it starts running badly. Like it's obvious, if you're putting cheap, dirty diesel in your car every single day, at some point it's going to affect it. And we are no different. So you need to realize today, how are you treating your body in terms of, all these topics that I'm going to talk about? And hopefully, off the back of the podcast, be a little bit clearer about how you want to treat it going forward, because you're using this, the undercurrent of this podcast is about foresight, right? You're using all of this information that I'm giving to you today to be like, okay, if I don't do this and if I don't prioritize these things and look after this one vessel that I've been given to last me a lifetime, then I'm going to end up paying for it at some point. It won't be immediate. It might not be next week. It might not be next month. It might not even be next year, but you do pay the price for neglecting your body. So the first aspect I want to chat to you about is fuel, which is obviously the diesel that you put into your car. Good diesel. The same for us is our fuel is food. Obviously, it's the thing that allows us to stay alive, right? And your body responds to the quality of food that you're consistently putting into it. I always say, when you eat well, you feel well. And when you eat like shit, you feel shit. And this doesn't mean, I think if you've been listening to my podcast over the years, or if you've been following me on social media over the years, you'll know straight away that I don't mean that you have to eat, perfectly nutritious food all of the time. That's not what I'm talking about. It's about what you do most times. It's not about what you do sometimes. But yes, if for the most part you're going to be fueling your body or putting, takeaways and sugary processed foods into your body, it's going to react, So it does matter about what we're putting into our body most of the time. I look at nutrition as, and this works for most people, after working with, at this point, thousands of clients, one-to-one, what works best for most people, and again, it mightn't be what works best for you, but for most, it's, 3 nutritious meals at regular times. And nutritious meals, a lot of people will hear me say that and think, oh, these, organic, blah, blah, blah meals. That's not what I'm talking about. A nutritious meal can be a ham, cheese, tomato, lettuce, onion sandwich, You're getting your protein, you're getting your carbohydrates. I think with nutrition, people, and it's because of all of the shit online as well, massively overcomplicate nutrition. And what happens when you overcomplicate things? You can never ever stick to it. So with nutrition, go back to the basics, have 3 meals a day where you focus on, having some sort of protein and some sort of complex carb. Try and have them at regular times throughout the day. This creates hunger signals. And then have a little bit of chocolate or a little bit of ice cream or whatever it is that you fancy. A little bit every single day is fine. For most things in life, you can follow the 80-20% rule, 80% of your nutrition, good quality, high protein, high fiber, all of those good things. And then 20% of the stuff that you enjoy. So what you put into your body matters the same way as the quality of diesel that you're putting into your car matters. The next thing, when we're looking at the car analogy, is how often do you drive your car? If you knew you had this car for the rest of your life, you wouldn't leave it sitting in the garage or in the driveway without driving it ever, because you know that the engine would seize. Cars seize up when they are not used, and humans are no different. We are designed to move, and it's actually what maintains our muscle. We maintain muscle through movement. So I say this to clients, right? And maybe this is a bit harsh, but when we stop moving, we start dying, basically. I think about my granny. What age is my granny? She'd kill me for saying this now, but she's probably about 85, something like that. And she still goes for a walk every single day. And, there's periods where she might not go for a while, and she'll always complain to me that she's not feeling great, or that the muscles are sore, or that the body's tight. And we'll have the conversation, and she'll say, yeah, I need to get back out walking. And when she walks every single day, she notices the benefits of that in terms of how her body feels. Because as I just said, our muscles are maintained, the health of our muscles are maintained through movement. We weren't born to sit indoors in front of a screen 24/7, not moving our body. And I also think on the back of that, right, I think we massively underestimate how connected movement is to mental health, to our energy, to our mood, to our stress regulation. Like, I run maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 times a week. When I'm stressed, it's 5 times a week, because I know that getting out for a run will make me feel better. Mental health needs physical support. When I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling emotional, I get out and I go for a run, and I release all of that stress. I release all of that tension. So not only are we exercising to maintain our actual body, the whole thing I'm talking about today, this vessel that we get, the only home we get for our entire lives. Not only are we moving and exercising to maintain that, right? We're also exercising for the mental health benefits, to reduce stress, to improve mood, to improve energy. Like, I know exercising is the last thing that you want to do when you're feeling, tired, but it always energizes you. Like I've never finished a run feeling worse about myself. I've never gone out for a walk and felt worse about myself. So exercise, we need to get away from the thing that a lot of people think now and realize that exercise isn't primarily about changing your body, right? That's not really what exercise is about. It is one of the most powerful tools that we have as a form of self-respect. It's for muscle mass maintenance, and it's for, mental health, balancing and maintaining or improving your mental health. So basically, drive the car regularly, move your body regularly. Now, on the flip side of that, I think it's really important to note as well that, you wouldn't leave the car in the driveway to seize up, but equally, you wouldn't drive your car flat out every single day nonstop, because eventually the engine will do the opposite of seizing up. It will overheat. And also, if you're driving it full tilt constantly, the parts of the car will wear down faster, will wear down sooner. And I honestly think this is how so many people are living their lives today. And I think it's only getting worse. I think we as individuals have to actively fight against this happening to us. And that is that, we're constantly on. We're constantly on the go. We're constantly doing. We're constantly creating. We're constantly stressed, overstimulated, and exhausted. And we never allow ourselves rest. We're running on caffeine. We're running on cortisol, and we're all pretty much in survival mode, And then we wonder why we're feeling exhausted. We wonder why we're feeling burnt out. We're giving our energy to everything else in our lives except ourselves, doing things for everybody, in work all the time, doing more than you're supposed to, and never actually giving ourselves time to rest and time to recover. And I think as I said, the day and age that we live in, a lot of us are looking at rest as a luxury, or even, a waste of time. Well, I could be doing this or I could be doing that. I know I've fell victim to it really badly in the past. If I wasn't creating, if I wasn't doing something, I was wasting my time. But rest really isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And I always use the analogy of charging the batteries. Like, you plug your phone in every single night because, you couldn't deal with the consequences of not having your phone tomorrow, because your phone would not work if you did not charge the batteries. We are no different. And eventually, and this I can speak from personal experience, it was fucking horrendous, but eventually the bill comes, and it comes due with interest if you haven't been looking at the warning signs of, constantly on, constantly doing, constantly creating. And your nervous system, as I said, will eventually send the bill, because it will shut down. And it's like the computer in a car. If it's gone on, it will eventually turn off. And most people, myself included, wait until their bodies force them to shut down before they slow down. So just be careful that you aren't falling victim to this, I suppose. I talk about it as being the productivity trap, where a lot of us base our worth on how much we can do, how much we can produce, how, I suppose, good we can be perceived externally. And that's not what life is about. But as I said, it's about actively pulling away from that, because that's the narrative. That's the narrative that society is hammering home. Growth at all costs. Be bigger, be better, do more. At the cost of what? Your fucking mental health, your physical health, your sanity, your body literally breaking down. It's not worth it. And it's it's finding that balance. I'm not saying don't do things. Absolutely do. Go after the things that, light up your soul. Do whatever you want to do with your life. But don't base your worth on doing, on outcomes, I think that's a really important point. Drive the car, which is move your body, but don't drive it 24/7 full tilt. Same with you. Don't be on 24/7. When you clock out of work, actually clock out of work. Get the work emails off your phone. It's not your responsibility to be answering emails outside of your work hours. But what happens if you do? Well, then you'll continually be expected to answer them. I remember, and I think I've talked about it before, but when I was teaching, right, I deleted my work emails from my phone, and a lot of the members on the staff thought I was mad. They were like, Kelly, how can you do that? I was like, do it. Just delete, press delete. But what happens if this, that, and the other? Well, they're contacting me outside of work hours, so how could they expect me to reply until I'm back in work? And it's about setting these boundaries because nobody else is going to do it for you. Like everything in life, people can give you the tools, people can give you the wisdom, people can bring you to the door, but they can't bring you in. You have to do the thing. You have to set the boundaries. You have to get up off your arse and move. You have to focus on fueling your body well. We do it for everybody else. And that's the reason why we're so anxious, we're so overstimulated, we're so burnt out, because we're doing everything for everybody else. We're saying yes to everybody else, work, family, friends, yes, 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 at the expense of saying no to ourselves. So stop saying no to yourself. Stop thinking that rest is a luxury. Give yourself space. Give yourself time to do things that you enjoy. Give yourself time to recharge the batteries. So yeah, move, but don't constantly be on, basically. The next thing about the car and how this can relate to real life is you wouldn't load the car with more than it can carry, right? Let's say you were to put 6, 7, 8 grown adults, squeeze them into the car. What would happen is it would eventually at some point start dragging along the ground, right? And I don't just mean physical weight here. So many people are carrying around everybody else's expectations, everybody else's emotions, everybody else's problems. I literally just spoke about this. We do everything for everybody else, but we can also carry around so much mental energy from other people. And again, wonder why we're constantly exhausted, A lot of things that you're carrying were never yours to carry. The expectations that others put on you have nothing to do with you. For some people as well, high achievers, I've already talked about this, the expectations that you're putting on yourself are so unrealistic. You would never expect them from anybody else. But for a lot of us, we can carry, emotional loads from other people. And the truth is, and this is so hard to take, right? But the truth is that you are not responsible for any other adult. You're not responsible for their decisions. You're not responsible for their actions. You're not responsible for their outcomes, how they live their life. And I know it would be great if you could. I know it would be great if you could control other people's decisions, actions, how they live their lives, how they showed up for themselves, how they showed up for others. It'd be amazing, because then everybody else who we think are doing wrong or are living wrong, we could change, but we can't. We can only change ourselves. And I think a huge part of health that people aren't aware of is this emotional load that we carry. Stress has weight, emotional weight. People pleasing has a weight, trying to do everything for everybody else at the expense of yourself, as I already mentioned, has a weight. Never resting has a weight. Constantly putting yourself last, constantly abandoning yourself at the expense of trying to please other people. All of this has an emotional weight. And you're going through your day, whether it's doing things for others, right? But even more than that, constantly your mind is ruminating on what are other people thinking. I've been asked to do this, I better do this because they'll think this. And you have this whole narrative going on in your brain constantly. Your brain is never switched off. You come to the end of the day and you're absolutely exhausted. You're mentally shattered. And then you wonder why you can't get up and go for a walk, Let go of all of the shit that was never yours to carry. I think I mentioned this maybe on the last podcast, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but I did an exercise with clients about, you know, carrying this bag and just putting it down for a minute and having a look inside and looking at all the things that you're carrying around on a daily basis. Other people's expectations, doing things for other people, all of the things that you're carrying that were never yours to carry, and start emptying the bag. Do you know what I mean? But again, it's uncomfortable because it requires having those conversations. It requires implementing those boundaries so that people can't take you for granted anymore. That's difficult to have those conversations. But again, you wouldn't load the car with more than it could carry. So easy when we think of the car. You're like, yeah, of course you wouldn't, because we'd be scraping on the ground. Like, it's so easy when we take ourselves out of the equation. But yes, we constantly put expectations, jobs, commitments on our shoulders from other people every single day. Another thing is, right, and this kind of links into people and who you surround yourself with and stuff like that, is for your car, right? If you were told on the day you were born, not that you could understand, but you know what I mean, that this was the only car you would ever get, I guarantee you wouldn't leave it outside at all. You would put it in the most well-protected, insulated garage, because you'd want to protect it from damage. You'd want to protect it from weathering. You'd want to protect it from erosion. You wouldn't constantly keep it exposed to harsh conditions. But the same goes for our environment. We are no different. The same is for the people and the things that we surround ourselves with, the people we constantly expose ourselves to. That matters. The people we surround ourselves with matters. The conversation that we have on a daily basis with other people matters. Negativity matters. You know, the constant drama, the constant moaning, the constant chaos, the constant criticism, the constant toxicity that a lot of people surround themselves with, that affects you. You can't leave a car out in the lashings of rain and expect it not to be weather damaged. We are no different. When we expose ourselves to naysayers, to begrudgers, to negative Nancy's constantly, that slowly wears us down over time. You know the quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? Well, that's true. Because if you're constantly exposed to negativity, you're probably going to become more negative, you know? It's this echo chamber idea that I've spoke about way back on the podcast, you know? When we're surrounded by people who have all the same opinion, you know, think about people who love rugby. They're all going to chat about how good rugby is, you know, and probably how shit soccer is. I only had that conversation with a client yesterday. We're a rugby household, you know, but you'll never hear about other sport if you continuously surround yourself with the rugby environment, right? And I'm not talking about rugby here. I'm talking about people who are negative, people who are never going to take responsibility in their life, people who are never going to see, you know, improvement because they're focused on the negative all of the time. What, you know, other people are doing, opinions on everybody else. But you ask them to take responsibility for their own actions and they'll look at you with 5 heads. Surrounding yourself with these type of people matter. One thing that I constantly see with my clients, right, is that when we're working together for a long period of time, they start to say to me, Jesus, Kellie, you know, I've noticed that this person or that person has something to say about how I'm changing the way I show up in my life. And for a lot of people, when they see you changing and you having different opinions or you trying to work towards a better version of yourself, they won't like that. Because 1, they're terrified that they'll be left behind. But 2, you know, other people, you know, prefer versions of you that best serve them. Think about that. People like the version of you that they know. And when you start to change, People don't like that. I had Paul Scanlon on the podcast a long time ago at this point, and I always reference back to some things he says because I think the man is just a wealth of knowledge. But he talked about that, you know, when he started wearing a man bun, people were like, oh, and jeering him and saying, who do you think you are? And, you know, oh, this, that, and the other. And he was like, it had nothing to do with anybody else, the hairstyle that I chose to wear. Like, think about that. But yet everybody has a fucking opinion. So my advice to you is try and surround yourself with people who are headed in the direction that you want to go. You know, I had a client chat to me now, it was a good few years ago, but they basically, were coming to me looking to lose weight and their whole family were overweight and they were with me a good few months and they'd seen a load of progress and they were loving life and, you know, losing weight and getting fit and all of these things. And they started to say to me, you know what, I'm really surprised because my family are, you know, saying smart things to me and I thought they would be really happy for me. And I was saying, you know, that whole point about when you start to change, you start to leave other people behind. And when people aren't willing to do the work on themselves to get to the next, you know, version of themselves, this new improved version of themselves, they don't want you to either because they don't want to be left behind and they don't want you changing into this version that probably won't suit them anymore because you're probably not going to do all the things you did for them before. You're probably not going to agree with every single thing that they say. You're probably not going to let them take you for granted. So if you take one thing from this conversation, it's that who you surround yourself with matters. And it's so uncomfortable because, you know, it's not easy realizing that Sandra, who you've been hanging around with for 20 years, is just not living her life in the direction that you want to go. Sitting in at home, constantly bitching and moaning about others, never doing anything with her life, you know? And they talk about this, we chatted about it with Paul Scanlon as well. He talked about it as a cocoon. Other people talk about it as the uncomfortable period, but it's that messy middle where you're kind of like, okay, I want different things from my life. I want to surround myself with people who are now kind of more aligned to the version of myself that I want to become. And you don't know who that is. Where are they? You know, so it's that bit in the middle that you're kind of cutting ties with those people who just aren't headed in the direction that you want to go, but you haven't found the new people that, you know, you want to hang out with, that messy middle. And so many people, if they do the work on themselves, can get to the point, right? And Paul Scanlon said for a lot of people, they turn back because it's just so uncomfortable. But like on the other side of uncomfort is incredible things. And that's something that I've realized, again, through experience. This podcast is just fucking chatting about the struggles that I've been through and what I've learned out the other side. But nothing worthwhile comes easy. And on the other side of wading through the fucking trenches is so much growth. Like last year, 2026, was that last year? No, it's 2025. 2025 was one of the most uncomfortable, hard years of my life. I wouldn't wish the mental torture that I went through on anybody. But honestly, this year, because of having experienced that and because of having come through that, I'm in such a better place mentally, just such a better place, such a happier, if that's the word we want to use, but such a more fulfilled, content place in my life. So yeah, I went on a little bit of a tangent with that one, but who you surround yourself with really, really matters. Another thing, when we go back to the car, is if you hopped into your car, remember the car that you get, the only car you get for your life, and lights came on the dashboard, what would you do knowing that you don't get another car, don't get another replacement, don't get another upgrade? You probably wouldn't ignore the flashing signals for months on end and just cross the fingers and pray that it sorts itself out. We wouldn't do this, but so many people do this to ourselves. Anxiety, fatigue, pain, whether it's emotional or physical, brain fog, low mood for a prolonged period of time, poor sleep, burnout. All of these things are warning signs. They're warning signs that there's something not right. And a lot of people see these as weaknesses. They are absolutely not weaknesses. Anxiety isn't just a weakness that you have. Anxiety is a signal for something else going on in your life, an unmet need, something maybe that you're ignoring. And our bodies are constantly communicating to us all of the time. But most of us never listen until it's too late. Until, the engine light comes on and you're like, oh shit, I should have sorted that out a couple of months ago. When the engine light comes on the dash, you have to get that sorted. But for so long, these signals have been popping up, telling you that there's something not right, but you've just been ignoring them. So what I would say to you is, don't wait until it's too late, Don't wait until the crippled anxiety or, the low mood or the fatigue, gets to the point of that nervous system shutdown where your body literally forces you to stop. And I don't think people who have never experienced something like that can really, really understand the extent to which your body can shut off. Like, you can get to a point of clinical burnout where you literally cannot get out of the bed. You can get to a point of crippling anxiety where you literally feel like there's a hose pipe in your chest and it is full blasting fear out. You don't know what you're fucking afraid of, but you're afraid of something. You can get to such a level of low mood, depression, where again, you physically cannot get out of bed. But there's been warning signs all along that you're not looking after yourself. And it's multifaceted. It's not just you haven't been eating well for a week, you haven't been sleeping well for a week, you've missed training for a month. It's not that. We're talking years of bad habits, of bad routines, of not looking after ourselves, abandoning ourselves, saying no to ourselves constantly for years on end. Maybe saying yes to other people, but also, let's be honest, let's cut through the shit here, because it's so much fucking easier not to do the things that benefit us. Like, it's so much easier not to train. It's so much easier not to go for a walk. It's so much easier not to make your own meals. It's so much easier to say, sure, I'll cancel on meeting up with a friend because I have no energy. I'll sit in on the couch tonight. All of these things that are foundations of health, it's so much easier in the moment to not do them. But again, another undercurrent to this chat is that at some point you have to pay the price. I recently did a business course, right, with an absolute incredible human being. His name is Blaise Brosnan. He's written, I think, 3 books at this point. But he's amazing. Google him. He lives in Wexford, right? But he ran a business course. Now, a lot of people who attended the business course that I attended, it was a Wednesday morning for 15 weeks in a row, didn't miss a day. But a lot of people were going to how to improve their business, how to improve marketing, negotiation, all of these different things. But I wasn't. I was going for more of a kind of mindset, kind of self-worth element to the course, because Mo had done it before, because she runs her family business. And she was like, Kellie, I think you could get so much out of this. But I did the course with Blaise, and one of the things that he said, so many things stuck. I used them as teaching points with my own clients. But one of the things he said is, nothing in life is neutral. You will never get away with not paying a price. You just decide when you want to pay the price. And I think this is so evident when we look at training. Like, getting out for your walk, doing your 2 to 3 workouts a week, you pay the price in the moment, I was only chatting to Dan about this. Nobody goes to the gym and thinks, I can't fucking wait for this gym session. Like, pretty much nobody before a workout wants to do the workout. But they're willing to pay that small price in that moment instead of kicking the can down the road. Because Mary out there thinking that never training, never moving her body isn't going to pay a price off the back of that is absolutely delusional. Nothing in life is neutral. You don't get to skip paying the price. All you get to decide is when you want to pay the price. Do you want to pay it in small little increments now and down the line live a happy, healthy life, increase your health span. Health span is basically, so there's a difference between health span and lifespan. Lifespan is the age you get to, 95. You die at 95, that's your lifespan. Health span is completely different. And I think people confuse these two. Your health span is the age you get to where you live independently. You're able to look after yourself. You're able to go and get your shopping and feed yourself and look after yourself and all of those things. And the research on this is scary. And the reason I know this is because I've been chatting to clients about this recently. But I think the average gap between health span and lifespan is like 10 to 15 years. Think about that for a second. Do you want to be on this planet for 10 or 15 years where you can't look after yourself? Now, again, I always say this, there's going to be outliers. There's going to be health complications that come up that were never your fault, right? But for the most part, the actions that you take today will determine the quality of your life down the road. But it's just this thing that, again, coming back to it, and I'm going to finish up with one more example, but it comes back to this foresight. We have this incredible ability to look into the future. No other animal does. They're just interested in, where am I going to get my next meal? Where am I going to sleep tonight, right? But we get to look into the future, mentally look into the future and think, okay, I can be here or there or here in 5, 10, 15 years' time. How do you get there? It's so easy when we think about our job, We know how to progress up the ladder in our career. We have to do this, that, and the other. We never, ever take that advice for our health. Transfer of skills. Think about the thing that you're really good at in your life. What are all the things that make you good at it? Talked about it in the last episode. And apply them to your health and your fitness. Patience, consistency, resilience, bounce back ability, doing the thing in the moment even when you don't want to, allowing yourself time. Like, it's so easy when we take it away from health and fitness, but we all don't think about health and fitness because it's not instantaneous. Think about your job. If you stop performing at your job, it would be instantaneous feedback, because after a week or two, you'd know about it if your numbers dropped or whatever the job that you do, You didn't show up to the classes if you're a teacher. You'd be pulled up on that pretty much straight away. But we only have ourselves to pull ourselves up on our health. Obviously, if you work with a coach, they can help you. Like I say to every single one of my clients, you will get every single thing you need to succeed here, but I can't do the work for you. There's three parts to change. First is awareness. Second is knowledge or tools. And third is action. I give every single one of my clients those two things. Awareness, you can't change what you're not aware of. And I give them the tools or the knowledge to change, but I can't physically do the work for them. Okay, last one. We've made it to the end, and this is the last thing. And I think it's very, very important, because I think this is a huge factor that is preventing people from just getting the work done. And that is, right, you wouldn't spend your whole life comparing your car to somebody else's car. You've been given this one car. You know it's all you get for the rest of your life. So why waste your fucking energy comparing it to Mary, Sandra, Tom, the neighbours down the road? What would you do? You would focus all of your time and all of your energy protecting this one car as much as you could, and ensuring that you are giving it what it needs, as I've said already, to make sure it ran smoothly for as long as possible. I'm not talking about the car. I'm talking about yourself. And comparison, like especially with social media, like honestly, comparison steals so much joy from people. It makes people disconnected from themselves instead of looking after themselves. Because, Mary or Sandra down the road is so much better at this, so much better at that, so lucky because they have this, so lucky because they have that. And the mad thing is that you're comparing your behind the scenes real life. You're comparing that to a person's highlight reel. Social media, right? Take this line and run with it. Social media is not real life. And it will ruin your life if you keep acting like it is. I said literally on my Instagram stories yesterday, I said that I don't go on my phone first thing in the morning. I get up at about 6 most mornings. I do not go on social media till 10 a.m. because who goes on social media and comes off feeling better about themselves? Almost nobody. So I give myself that 4 hours in the morning free from the toxicity of the online world. Because honestly, lads, it's not real life. And if there is people who are showing up as, their most, let's say, we've this word thrown around a lot, but their most authentic selves, that's great, but they still aren't showing everything. They still are not showing everything, And to bring this back to myself, because all of this is just, as I said, experiences I've had throughout my life, what I've learned from them, and just sharing it with you in the hopes that maybe it can help you change your life. But again, it's your decision whether it does or not, because it's the action that you take off the back of it. But like, people might see what would they see from me? Maybe my social media following, the number of clients I have, the success in my business, the events that I speak at worldwide. Right? They might see all of these things and they might think, oh, that's amazing. And, doesn't Kellie live a great life, and doesn't Kellie have it easy? And then, right, if I was to bring you behind the scenes and I was to show you every single thing that it took for me to get to that point, I guarantee you 99% of the people wouldn't choose taking that route to get to where I am today. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. I just know, because nobody knows every single sacrifice that I've made. Nobody knows every single mental health challenge that I've faced. Nobody knows the mountainous number of hours that I have spent building this business. Nobody knows the times that I've maybe neglected things that I shouldn't have neglected, or in order to build this. Now, am I saying I regret it? I'm not saying I regret it. But what I'm saying is, so many people, if they were given a list of actions that they would need to take to get to where they say they want to be, they might fool themselves in the moment and say, yeah, no, I'll do that. But how long they would stick it out for, I don't know. So I've gone off on a tangent there. But what I'm trying to get to is, social media is not real. It's not real. And you're looking at it and you're driving yourself absolutely mad, thinking everybody else has this great life and everybody else is killing it and everybody else is doing this, that and the other. And why is there something wrong with me? Why am I not happy? Why am I not, where I want to be with my health and fitness? I'll tell you why. Because you keep comparing yourself to others. Focus on your own car. Focus on your own body. Your only job in this life is to take care of your own car. And you know what? You might say, but I need to take care of my kids. Yeah, you do. But you are the blueprint for life. You are showing your kids how to live your life. And one of the things that has resulted in the most growth in terms of me improving how I'm living my life, and really taking, because we can all tell people what to do. It's easy to give advice, but really taking my own advice. One thing that has massively improved with me taking my own advice is having kids, because every single thing I do and every habit I repeat every day and what I prioritize and what I do in my life is showing my girls what matters. And it's probably going to be how they show up in their lives. I've said it before, but think about what age you are today, right? And think about your kid at that very age living their life exactly how you're living your life. Would you be happy? I'd say for a lot of people, the answer is no. Why? You're neglecting yourself. You're neglecting your health. You're neglecting both physical and mental health. You're probably working too much. You're probably not prioritizing connections with family, with friends, not prioritizing health, not getting enough sleep. The list goes on. And you wouldn't want that for your kid. So start acting like somebody worth modeling. All you have to do is to take care of your own car and stop worrying about everybody else's car, all the cars on the road, because it's none of your business. And likewise, what you do in your life is nobody else's business. But social media would have you believe otherwise. It would have you believe that you're living this inconsequential life, this sub-average life. You're not. You're just comparing yourself to a made-up reality. It's not real. And as I was saying, you come off social media thinking you're less than, hating yourself. And you need to realize that you will never, ever hate yourself into becoming somebody you like, somebody you love. There's no amount of self-hatred, self-criticism that will get you to where you want to be. So how about we start focusing on our own car? How about we start focusing on our own lane and stop worrying about what other people are doing in their cars, driving in a completely different lane? So that is it. Right. I hope that the car analogy has helped. I, as I said, had done this with clients and they're like, wow, that really, really helps because it just makes everything so clear. As I said at the very beginning, isn't hindsight a great thing? If we were able to look back on all of the decisions that we made, we'd be like, oh, I'd never do that again. But you don't know any difference in the moment. We do, however, know, and listen, it doesn't take a genius to say this, if you neglect your health now, you will end up paying for it down the line. Nothing is neutral. You don't get away scot-free with anything. You just decide when you want to pay the price. So I want to leave you with 2 questions off the back of this chat, and then I will let you go. First question is, I want you to ask yourself, are you treating your body like something you can replace later? Because, and I know I mentioned this at the start, but when I started thinking about this concept and I was like, oh, this would be a great, podcast episode, I started to realize that we're all treating our actual cars better than we're treating our bodies. But we only get one body. We're surely not going to get one car for the rest of our lives. We're going to have many of those. But yet we treat ourselves like something that can be replaced or something that we can focus on later. No, you're just pushing the can down the road and that can is gathering moss. It's getting worse and worse. The second question I want you to ask yourself is, if your body was the only vehicle you ever got, how would you treat it? And I want you to start doing this now because your body is the only vehicle that you get for your whole entire life. We will gather scars along the way. I've gathered a good few scars. I've had back surgeries. I've had knee replacements. I've had this, that, and the other, right? As a result of doing crazy things, playing rugby and all of these mad things when I was younger. So nobody comes through this life not gathering scars. I'm not talking about that, But what I am talking about is how you show up day to day, how you treat yourself. Stop abandoning yourself. I'm not talking about completely overhauling your life and saying, you know what, this episode has made sense. I'm going to get everything perfect tomorrow. That'll actually result in you giving up in 2 weeks. It's not about perfection. It's about meeting yourself at where you're at and trying to be a little bit better. Right, that is it. I hope you've enjoyed. And as always, if you have enjoyed the episode, maybe share it with someone you think would benefit from it. Stick it in the WhatsApp group. And I will see you on the next one and keep her lit.